Hi there, and welcome back to the channel for the second video of my Spanish road trip. In this episode I'll be touring the spectacular Spanish coastline, taking a trip into the Picos de Europa and playing around with intentional camera movement. If you like what you see, please subscribe to the channel and give the video a thumbs up. While I prefer to shoot most of my images with my Fujifilm GFX on a tripod, sometimes it's nice to travel light. This was taken with my X-T3 and an entry-level zoom lens that I bought used to bring with me on hikes. While there was still a bit of light left in the sky after sunset, I captured this image with the rocks reflecting the glow of the sky. I think the couple on the cliff top give the image a sense of scale. When you're surrounded by a spectacular landscape, it's easy to miss the small details. I liked the way that this little rock was almost perfectly aligned with the clouds, and I went for a minimalist approach with the post-processing. I was up early the next morning to capture the dawn, and I took this image on my way down to the shore about 30 minutes before sunrise. Unfortunately, I wasn't up early enough. Another photographer had beat me to it. Position A is on the other side of these rocks, and he'd staked his place and wasn't moving. He stood in the same place forever. I don't think he wanted me to get his shot. Atmospheric haze was present all through my trip. You'll see it in a lot of my shots. It really helps create a sense of depth with the mountains receding into the distance. One of the things that I've learned on this trip is that no amount of planning is enough, because you'll always have to deal with the unexpected. Whether it's Google Maps trying to bring me down a tiny little dirt track and having to reverse back for 50, 60 metres, or whether it's a gang of guys having a party and singing loudly in the background when I'm trying to film. Nothing ever goes according to plan, and it's important to realise that you've just got to go with the flow. And one of the things that I wasn't entirely planned for was the tides. I knew a lot of beaches are best at low tide. What I didn't really realise is that pretty much all of them are best at low tide, and at the moment high tide is coinciding with sunset rather than low tide, which is what I would have wanted. I came to this location a few hours ago when I got to the area just to do a recce, and I was able to stand out where that first headland is. So I decided I'd come down a couple of hours before sunset, just around high tide, thinking I might get a few shots. But I was expected to be standing where those rocks in the foreground are. So I'm going to have to come up with a plan B, I think. I'll wait for sunset and see what happens. I decided to leave the party animals to it and move on. And here's another shot taken with that amazing atmospheric haze, and this time it's enhanced by a forest fire, and it really just gives that incredible sense of depth. I could see this from the distance, and I was frantically trying to find a place to pull in to get the shot that wasn't obscured by trees. So I've gone to plan B and took a trip today up into the Picos de Europa. Incredible mountain landscape with the most incredible winding roads. My fuel consumption in the van was through the roof, just going up all the hills in second gear and third gear. As I drove up into the mountains, I came across this abandoned building covered in graffiti with an incredible vista behind it. It just gives you some idea of the scale of the place. In this scene, I was drawn to the diagonal bands of light and shade that worked their way across the image, the yellow-green foreground echoed by the background, and that tunnel at the side of the cliff just linking everything together. One of the things that can make a shot really effective is tonal or colour contrast. In this scene, I loved the way that the field almost just stood out like an island of colour in amongst the more monotone background. wouldn't consider any of these images as portfolio worthy, but I think they really give you a sense of what the place is like, the rolling hills and the light and shade and that haze that's there all the time, giving you that sense of depth. It never ceases to amaze me how life just manages to establish itself in the most inhospitable places. There were lots of trees like this just clinging to the rocks. I loved this one because it has a kind of an oriental feel to it, like something you'd see in a Japanese painting maybe. The way the mountains completely dwarf the cars and vans just gives you some idea of the sense of scale of this place. Didn't get a lot of great photographs. The conditions were very, very hazy and very, very sunny, but an incredible experience. And I did get some photos with my infrared converted camera. My understanding of infrared is that it's at the opposite end of the spectrum to blue, which is the colour of the haze. So it's like it cuts through it and you get the scene as though it was just absolutely clear. And I took a lot of photographs with that camera today. And I think there was a few that I was quite pleased with. I set out early the next morning to retrace my steps back towards the coast. This is from the same location as the earlier photograph with the tunnel, but it has a completely different feel to it. That's one of the joys of photography, that you can just keep going back to the same location and get totally different results every time. As I came down off the mountains, I came across a forest of eucalyptus trees and decided to try my hand at doing a little bit of intentional camera movement. These were taken by panning the camera upwards while the shutter was open. I experimented with different shutter speeds. Your results will vary depending on the focal length of the lens that you're using. I had a bit of fun playing around with the images afterwards in Lightroom. Because they're abstract images, there's really no right and wrong, and you can go a little bit over the top. I even tried shifting the colour bands in one to a completely cool colour. As I was driving, I spotted a sign saying Mirador, which I think is lookout point. So I took a little detour and came across these trees on the crest of a hill. Well, I found a location this morning that's not dependent on the tide. The sun would be rising almost directly behind that sea stack tomorrow morning, and I think maybe with the pre-dawn glow it could look really, really stunning. So a little recce shot today. I'm still going to take something. I'm going to put on the 10-stop filter and do a long exposure, and if it works out, I'll show you it, and if tomorrow's works out better, I'll show you that instead. I found another location just around the corner from where I was a moment ago, where these incredible waves are crashing in. And what I'm doing is taking multiple exposures. I'm taking some at around 500th of a second to freeze the splashes of the waves, and then putting on a 6-stop filter and taking them at around about a third of a second to get the water streaming down off the rocks. And I'll combine the two of them then later on in Photoshop. Back at the same location as this morning. The cloud has rolled in, so my hoped for sunset picture is not going to happen, but I'm going for a long exposure 10-stop filter at 2 minutes, around F13 I think it is. So it should give silky smooth water, and hopefully it's good, and if it is, here it comes. This morning I'm on a beach that has those amazing seascapes, sea stacks all around, big waves. But if I pan over here, I come down to these amazing rocks, incredible patterns.